making a new holder, I start with turning the taper to match up with the dividing head it will be fitted to. Then I drill and tap as I need to be able to pull against this, as I cannot use external clamps this time. I may mount this holder in a collet chuck, so I machine a straight section concentric with the taper. Unnecessary to make such an effort to hit a dimension exactly here, but I was having fun. Got it nice and shiny. Then I'm cutting a surface that will match the inside of the watch case. Once this surface and shoulder is machined, all the features to get a concentric square mounting of the case are complete. Then I can turn the recess to help the holder flex and expand to clamp the case. Then I can part off and flip the part, machine this end to the correct dimension, and then drill and tap, and then move on to turning the internal taper in the end of the holder. Then I turn two cones, one with a 5mm hole and one with a 10mm hole, to give me options of the bolts that I will use to press this in, as I may need a little bit more space to be able to machine the back of the case, and then slitting the part, perhaps my favourite operation at the moment. This is the holder that I've made with the cone on a bolt. The bolt will press the cone in and expand out these surfaces. It is here that the case will sit. Made a drawbar, just bar with a thread on one end and tapped the other end. The taper of this dividing head matches up very well with that of the holder that I've made. So at this point everything should be square and concentric. To hold it solidly in, I wanted a bolt on the back, but with a bolt here it would hit this surface, and so I made a peculiar washer that allows the head of the bolt, which I had to turn down, to fit inside this bore, and as that catches the drawbar, pulls the holder down in, and so hopefully I will be able to do all the rotations and tilting required to this time machine the case with just this one setup. Machine all the outside surfaces of the case. Obviously the turning needs to be done first, and the next step is to try and use it to make a case and see if what I've done here is actually good. Very interesting doing this for a second time. I did go very gently to start with, but the holder never once failed and lost grip of the part, which was a considerable problem last time. Also being able to just clamp once into the tilting dividing head, which I wasn't able to do last time, as with the holder in the 3-jaw chuck on the dividing head took up too much space under the mill. But with this setup, removed a lot of setup time, and I improved the accuracy. It's very difficult to clamp the part the second time and have everything line up well. I don't like access to this back surface, may turn down the bolt. Unsure of the grade of stainless and how well that will go. Indeed, the wall thickness isn't that great, but a bit better might be better. I do love this part. You get to machine tilting surfaces that form the lugs, and the shape of the case really begins to show itself. Surface finish much improved, I think, just from sturdier, stronger work holding. Didn't drill the lugs on this attempt, as the internal parts of the case didn't go perfectly well, but perfectly well enough to use this as a test of the milling setup, and quite happy with how it went. This is the case that I've made. Very happy with it. Basically fixed all of the problems I had with the first attempt. Visually square, symmetrical. Actually measuring between here and here compared to here and here, I had nearly 0.1 mil difference. Measuring between here and between here, just over 0.2 mil difference. And I think this is because I'm using the dividing plate that's mounted on the spindle of the dividing head, and in fact I can use a plate on the crank, and as that's geared to the spindle, that should reduce this error, and I will do that for the next attempt. I think that's going to require me lifting the machine and moving it away from the wall. But I have considered doing that before, as it will allow me to get a camera in behind the machine and better see all of the turning of the internal parts. So I think, I certainly want to use the dividing plate on the crank, and I think that's going to be necessary to operate the machine with the dividing head turned around. The surface finish is better, I think, from being able to hold it more solidly. This rear surface is not how I would like it, and in fact there's a couple of parts that were missed with the milling, as it was so difficult to see with the large bolt sitting in the middle, and turning down the bolt I think will help that. But the finish that I have achieved can certainly be dealt with filing and hand lapping. Getting this surface to mate perfectly with this surface is still a bit of a puzzle. I machined the flat first and then these angles, and I have considered doing it the other way around, although I have a turned register just on the edge of this, which allows me to line the milling up with that to set the case thickness relative to the internal turning, the shoulder and the groove for the spring that will hold it in. As I have I've turned a version of the inside of the case and made a movement ring that is a friction fit upon the main plate, and this has allowed me to check the measurements of depth and test the method of holding the movement in, which will be making basically a circlip that will fit in a groove above the shoulder which the movement ring sits on. I've also completed some crystal tests to be sure that I can fit well crystal into the front of the case. I'm actually making the case slightly smaller than my test, and this has led to a number of tests. I've got so many of these now, as of course as this expands out and then grips upon the movement, the outside dimensions of this are slightly larger, but still have to fit in, and so I think in fact the next one of these I'll make should be lovely. And I think I'm actually going to, well, I've been thinking about making that before I make the next case, but along with moving the machine, I also want to regrind all the turning tools, as I was having trouble fitting everything in to the bottom of the recess to get good sighting on where the groove is positioned, which is obviously quite crucial. Although I do turn this, this is just over 1 millimetre now, turn it slightly larger than it has to be, so that I can hand lap that surface down close to a perfect fit with the spring fitting in the groove. Very excited to get one of these finally made, and well, that's what comes next, hopefully. Fingers crossed for the next one being the last one.